The Toronto Raptors are still looking for a head coach, and Vegas has some suggestions. This is Hoop Talks. Come in, come on. I'm Noor Zainab. Justin Pooni.
What the hell was that?
Come on in. Like join the room. You know, we're talking basketball. Come on in, guys.
Come on, you crying?
Come on down.
Dude, I know Nick Nurse got you that emotional, man.
Yeah, this is still very rough. It's still very new here. Nick Nurse parted ways with the Raptors last week, and the Raptors still do not have a head coach. We are a chicken without a head right now.
I guess so.
That is a great analogy. I don't know anyone.
I don't know about that analogy.
I think it works. But anyway, this guy right behind me, no longer the coach for the Toronto Raptors, but we are currently looking to see who can fill his spot. The latest name was Ime Udoka, who is now thankfully gone to the Houston Rockets. But Vegas actually has a ton of options for us, and we'll talk about all these things. We got, Adrian Griffin's going to be a promotion from within. Then you got Kenny Atkinson, Sam Cassell. I see Jerry Stackhouse. I like that one over there. Mike D'Antoni's interesting. Stan Van Gundy, I don't know about that one. We'll come back to it. But before we look into all the available coaches, or the recycling tree of whatever people want to go through whenever we talk about coaches and stuff, I want to ask you, Crina, you're here for the first time after Nick Nurse got let go, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think his firing was justified from the front office?
I think it was time. I think we've kind of reached a breaking point with both the relationship between him and the players, his relationship with the front office, with the fans, with the media. I just think it wasn't working anymore. When he first got promoted to head coach, he was trying all these different things, and it was new, and it was different than what the problems with Dwayne Casey was. But now it feels like he's gone into a Dwayne Casey type of mindset where he's sticking to his same thing, like heavy minutes on his starters, not really wanting to budge or play any of the young guys.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know what's interesting, as you say that, right next to you is the Jelani Goodridge-Reid, and
Yes.
he is very vocal, very proud. He's very vocal, very proud, very open about the fact that he thinks Nick Nurse was very easily a scapegoat. So, Jelani, what do you have to say to that when it comes to
I see what Krina's saying. Like, Nick is not innocent here. That was my point. He's not innocent. We know that there was lack of adjustments. There were problems with the systems put in place, multiple games for months. We saw it, right? But I don't like the fact that Raptors fans want to sit here on Twitter, on YouTube, in the comments of IG and say that it's Nick Nurse's fault that
Please
this happened.
don't read IG comments.
Yeah, it's a
Why?
waste
That's
of
where the
time. It's a
most
waste
fun
of
is.
time. Truly a dark place. But I think it's not his fault. It's not. Look at the roster construction. I see that the front office has gotten away with putting together this team that is just a bunch of dudes that don't mesh. Right? And we need to find a way to get shooting in this building. We need to find a way to get a bench. I talked about that on previous shows. There's no bench here, obviously. So what is he going to do? How is he going to have that trust, to put guys and give guys minutes if he doesn't believe in the construction of the roster? That's why I feel like the front office got away with, making him look like the bad guy in this situation. Yeah. It's not all Nick Nurse's fault. So that's my point here. I don't want Raptors fans thinking that it's Nick Nurse's fault that the Raptors were not good this season.
The Raptors weren't good because they don't have the right roster built, right? Nick Nurse had to coach what he was given, right? And quite frankly, he wasn't given a lot, right? The Raptors the year previous, everything went right for them. Right, when they were the 5th seed, like everything, health-wise, shooting-wise, offensively, it went perfect for them. Right, that's what they did, the 5th seed. This year, right, everything there was injuries. The offense wasn't consistent. There was clearly some selfishness going on in the locker room as well. And like you said, Crina, I think it was just time for a change. 10 years in one city, especially as an NBA coach, 5 as an assistant, 5 as a head coach, it's a long time. And I think when you look at Nick Nurse and it was just time to score your separate ways. The messaging gets tired. We hear about all the time in football, Jelani, right? When a coach is there, unless it's Bill Belichick or one of these iconic coaches have a shelf life where their messaging needs to change. There needs to be a fresh voice because guys will tune it out. And I think Nick Nurse, great coach, Masai, great executive. They won a title, but it was just time for them to go their separate ways. And I think that's just where how it has to be.
Yeah. Well, I see the part about how obviously it's a roster construction. We know that Masai and Bobby didn't really give him the right. And he's made sure to mention that time and time again in the press conferences to the media to be like, well, I'm working with what I got. This is what I've been given and I'll do what I got to do. But I have something else to say to that. I do think a little bit of bench development, no matter what you've been given, does fall on the coach, because we saw the years prior when Dwayne Casey was here. We legitimately had a bench mob because Dwayne Casey prioritized the development of the bench. And Nick Nurse, I think, was pressured to win. And because he was pressured to win, he ran the starters into the ground when it came to minutes. But that also meant that he didn't give or put the bench in the right spaces to succeed. So it doesn't mean that you give them 25 minutes on the court and say, figure something out. It means you figure out their individual factors and their individual pros and cons and figure out how does that fit in with your team. And I think that's what was not happening in the locker room.
And to piggyback off that Dwayne Casey point, remember when OG Anunoby first came in? He was guarding LeBron in the playoffs, right? Now, not successfully, but Dwayne Casey had the trust to put him out there against LeBron James, right?
Yeah.
You saw the development of Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG, Jakob Poeltl, DeLon Wright even, right? Like all these guys played under Dwayne Casey. And we saw over the years with Nick Nurse, the rotation just got shorter, and shorter, where now you're basically league-wide, everybody knew that you're just running your starters into the ground.
Well, ever since Kyle walked, all the starters have been running into the ground. Ever since Kyle walked, the past 2 years, the Raptors have been leading the league when it comes to minutes. And again, I get why, because he doesn't trust anybody else to do it. But at the same time, you're the coach. It's your job to figure out how to get the best out of your players, not shun them on the side and say, oh, we'll see if you can play 2 minutes and on March 30th one day.
Look at Yuta as an example
of
who got less and less minutes the longer he was with us, and now he's thriving in Brooklyn. Like, it's just stuff like, okay, fine.
That happens all the time
didn't
with the
say-
Raptors players. Like when we
I didn't
move
say
off.
anything.
You're making
It's
a
been
face.
happening a lot recently too. Like whenever you see guys go, like we saw O'Shea walk away, we saw Stanley Johnson have big minutes for the Lakers, and it was things. I mean, Stanley Johnson was a Nick Nurse favorite, but we saw that happen for all those guys. So it's like we know it wasn't the best bench happening for sure, but the leadership, I think that's what it is. The leadership for Nick Nurse wasn't really there. And that's kind of ties into the ego factor too. I think that egos should have been set aside if you're the coach. Like come in and like
And that's why he's not innocent here.
Yeah.
Because of the points you bring up, right? I did want to see more. Yes, I did want to see more Doughton. I did want to see more Malachi because we've been talking about it for years. How does he fit here in Toronto? The Delano situation. So yeah, you can point out all those things, but yeah, just going back to the front office, I do think they do have to take some blame here. They have to
100%.
take some blame. They cannot act like they're innocent.
The whole organization failed this year. From top to bottom.
It just wasn't it.
From Masai to Bobby to Nick Nurse to the assistant coaching staff to the players. Everybody failed.
Well, before we were going to be the flea market for every NBA team out there, and we end up becoming buyers instead.
Right.
So we might be another buyer again because we need a new coach on this team. And there's a couple names, as I mentioned, that are currently in the running. In Adrian Griffin, who could be promoted from within. There was Ime Udoka, who now is going to be with the Rockets. But there's a couple other names that I see right now that Vegas thinks could be a good shot at landing the next coaching position for the Raptors. So out of all of them, Crina, anyone that you would want to see coach this team?
Give me Jerry Stackhouse at plus 800.
Yeah,
Tar Heel.
baby.
My other choice probably would be Kenny Atkinson, but I'm not sure how willing he would be to take the job here. I think that's also a factor you have to take into consideration. How many of these coaches would
That's very
actually
true.
want to move
come
here and like actually deal with whatever is coming their way in terms of roster construction and rebuilding, whatever they plan to do. Honestly, like if you look, Mark Jackson and Stan Van Gundy should not be on that list.
Why?
No.
Mark Jackson built the Warriors. I actually would take Mark Jackson or Sam Cassell, my two favorites. Sam Cassell's been a Doc River assistant for years now. He knows the game. He's been a former player, so he can relate to players in the locker room, right? People respect him. He's an NBA champion, coach, and player. Mark Jackson is a former Toronto Raptor. He's one of the greatest point guards of all time. He built the Golden State Warriors and allowed Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to do what they do. And they bring cachet. They bring name base behind it. And I think for the Toronto Raptors, who are not a hotbed free agent destination, having a coach like that who has some pull alongside a guy like Masai Ujiri, who clearly does have pull, that just makes Toronto more of an attractive market for players to want to come and play. I would go with a big name here. I think that right there. Look, I don't think Jerry Stackhouse has ties to the Raptors, but he's in Vanderbilt right now, has full control of the whole college program. I don't know if you want to give that up. Right? Mike D'Antoni should not be coaching the league ever again.
I don't know why.
You know what you're going to get with him. Kenny Atkinson, again, Does he want to leave Golden State? Does he want to leave? That he
What about Vogel? Because people have been talking about Vogel.
But see, Vogel's a defensive coach, right? Masai's talked a lot about offense and shooting, right? I don't think Frank
Yeah, but
Vogel,
they also need to bring defense in.
I could see
The
it.
foundation is still a defensive team and a defensive
And I
franchise.
think the one thing we can hopefully all agree on is I don't really want to see Adrian Griffin be the head coach. No discredit to him, right? I just think the Raptors need a new
We are not
fresh voice.
promoting from within.
Yeah.
There's no promotions from within happening.
I think that's the most likely option. Obviously, you see the list. He's number one. I
Mm-hmm.
would not be surprised at all if it's Griffin. I think he's capable of being a head coach. I would look at Atkinson. That would be my favorite. I think, with what he's done, he's been around the league this last decade with like LA, Golden State. He's been in Atlanta with New York as an assistant. So he has the experience there, and head coached the Brooklyn Nets. Remember, they did go to that playoffs, that fun team in 2019. So I think he's capable of being a very good head coach. Could bring in a new flavor to Toronto, and obviously he also he did get hired by the Hornets. He did turn it down for Golden State. I would too, but yeah, I think that would be a good option. I also would look at Jerry Stackhouse, not because I'm a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, but I just think that could work out. But obviously, you bring up the Vanderbilt point.
Yeah.
But I think that
If the money's right, the money's right.
All right, so we saw Crina go 800 for Jerry Stackhouse. We saw Justin go 1,500 for Mark Jackson, and then Jelani settled at a nice
Didn't you say Sam?
I said Sam.
plus
Yeah.
350.
I think either
Sam
or. If I
Cassell.
was to pick Sam Cassell.
Sam Cassell.
Yeah.
Okay, well, whatever.
Yeah,
We'll
Atkinson.
see. If Masai, Bobby, whoever's listening, we got some ideas. So does Vegas, apparently. And there's a couple of names on that roster. The Raptors are about to have one of the craziest off seasons, starting with the hiring of a new head coach. So stick around for next time. We'll be back on Friday. Take care.